propranolol and cimetidine. So based on that, it was what he told was it the most fruitful basis of the discovery of.
So to introduce about
yes.
Shweta, can you please introduce yourself before
Yes.
going ahead with the program?
Yes. Good afternoon, one and all. I'm myself, Dr. Shweta G. Kumari. I am a graduate of Usmania Medical College and I have completed my MD Pharmacology from KNR University. Before entering to today's topic of discussion, first I would like to thank Dr. Shivamurthy sir for starting this Medical Pharmacology Society and also for giving me this wonderful opportunity to talk at least or to bring upon a small light if possible upon this topic of drug repurposing. At the same time, I would like to thank Ms. Lee ma'am and also the CDSIMER for providing this platform so that currently we are able to reach so many medical pharmacologists. And also thanks Dr. Pratibha ma'am for your wonderful encouraging words. With that, I would like to enter into today's topic, that is drug repurposing. Hope I can show some light upon this, if not the whole complete drug repurposing. So what is generally drug repurposing? Before entering into the topic, first I would like you to observe this figure that I've been sharing. Here you can see that there are many drugs. The clinicians, the people who are there, the clinicians or the physicians, they are trying to treat the newer emerging diseases of the patients and they try to look for the newer drugs when they are already sitting on a pile of the drugs. So this drug repurposing addresses this issue. When we have certain drugs already discovered with so much of money, energy, time, so rather than looking for a newer drug, drug repurposing shows a light upon deviating these drugs to a newer therapeutic indications. If you go, before going into that, first let me bring one line quotation told by Sir James Black. He was a Nobel Prize winner for physiology and medicine in 1988. He won Nobel Prize for his work on propranolol and cimetidine. There was one quotation of Sir James Black which told that the most fruitful basis for the discovery of a newer drug is to start with an old drug. Based on this line of work itself, the drug repurposing occurs. Today, I will be dealing the topic under the headings of definition, history, pharmacoeconomic aspect, traditional drug discovery versus the drug repurposing, strategies, approaches, methodologies, examples, and advantages. So if you go in a basic definition of drug repurposing, it is nothing but a process of identifying new therapeutic uses for old or existing or available drugs. See, the drug may or may not be in market right now. Even then, the drug can be used for drug repurposing. And it is an effective strategy in discovering or developing drug molecules with newer pharmacological or therapeutic indications. Now, if you go into the actual definition of drug repurposing, it is nothing but it is a process of identification of newer pharmacological indications from old or existing or failed or investigational or already marketed or FDA approved drugs and even the approved drugs, and their application to the development of newly developed drugs to the treatment of other diseases other than the drugs originally intended therapeutic use. Mind you here, if there is any modification of already old use, using the drug for that newer modification is not drug repurposing. It is completely altogether different disease with different pathogenesis and the mechanism. With that, let me go with the synonyms of drug repurposing. There are many names for drug repurposing, right from drug repositioning, retasking, reprofiling, rescuing, recycling, redirection, and also known as therapeutic switching. But there are some literatures which tells the minor differences between some of these things. That is, we have a drug repositioning we have already covered. It is developing a newer indication for existing drugs or biologics. We have drug reprofiling, wherein it includes reducing the risk and the cost associated with drug development, which has already undergone the preclinical and clinical testing, that is after the phase 1. So, if you're further reducing the cost and the risk associated with the drug, that is a reprofile. Now, there is another term, reformulate. It is nothing but finding ways to modify formulation to allow a drug to enter a newer market. That means changing a basically available drug into a newer formulation for a newer indication. That is a drug reformulating. Now, before going into the history, I would like to say that no history is incomplete without thalidomide, any part of pharmacology. So thalidomide is a wonderful example from where it went from prescription for disaster to the WHO list of essential medicines. So where all the story started from the thalidomide. It originally started with just it was first originally synthesized by CEBA. It was a Swiss pharmaceutical company in 1952. Later on, it was acquired by a German pharmaceutical company known by Chemigurenthal in 1956 and was marketed as a non-barbiturate hypnotic sedative under the brand name of Contrigan. It gained its popularity basically as an efficacious drug for anti-emetic in pregnant women with morning sickness. The pregnant ladies was ecstatic to take the drug because they did not have to undergo the discomfort of morning sickness after taking it. But in 1961, there were independent observations were observed linking this pregnancy to congenital malformation that all we know known as phacomelia. So after these independent observations were observed, the UK Ministry of Health warned the patients to stop taking the drug. After that, what did the FDA did? FDA appointed Dr. Frances Kelsey. Now let me tell you something about Frances Kelsey. She was a pharmacologist and a physician who reviewed the emerging data linking the thalidomide with the neurological toxicities, including peripheral neuritis and phacomelia. It was her work which led to deny the approval of thalidomide for further use. For that, even she was awarded the highest civilian award in US government. Following that, after 3 years, Dr. Jacob Sheskin has observed an unexpected and dramatic resolution of leprous skin reactions in ENL cases. Now, following that, the FDA has performed in 1971 a randomized controlled trial for the thalidomide for the ENL patients. When it was found to be very fruitful, the FDA did approve thalidomide for the treatment of ENL in 1998. See, if you can see it, it's almost like 2.5 decades after the side effects were found, the thalidomide was repurposed for the ENL. But the story does not end here. A picture abhi bhi baki hai thalidomide ki. So what happened? In 1971, Dr. Jura Folkman, during a cancer study, he found that the tumors required angiogenesis for survival. Based on this hypothesis, almost 2 decades later in 1994, D'Amato, a scientist, has suggested that the thalidomide-induced birth defect, that is phacomelia, were due to the drug's inhibition of vasculogenesis in developing fetal limb. Following this, there were trials, there were clinical trials and everything after the studies. In 2006, like it's almost like 3 decades later, 3.5 decades later, thalidomide was approved with dexamethasone for the treatment of multiple myeloma by the FDA. So if you can see the journey of thalidomide, somewhere it started in 1950s and till 2006, the drug it keeps on showing itself for the newer medications, for newer indications. With that, now there is also another history point that I would like to highlight. That is nothing but with the bupropion. Bupropion is an atypical antidepressant, we all know. But when it was trialed, the patients, the participants, the subjects started quitting smoking with the trial. There were no physiological intervention, psychological intervention, pharmacological intervention, or any other thing. But the participants automatically started quitting smoking. With that observation, it was again trialed to stop as a stop smoking aid, and later it was approved as a stop smoking aid. It's also wonderful history with mifepristone. We all know mifepristone. It's a glucocorticoid receptor antagonist. So what happened during the preclinical trials? They were showing antiprogestin activity. But during the trials, where it was trialed to control hyperglycemia in the patients having endogenous Cushing syndrome who are not eligible for surgery, pregnancy termination was seen. So when pregnancy termination was seen, even before the approval of the original intended use, it was approved in 2000 itself as an abortion pill. Now coming to sildenafil, we all know is a phosphodiesterase 5 inhibitor. First, it was started as a cure for angina. Later on in 1988, it was approved for the erectile dysfunction. Coming to amantadine, we all know is glutamate antagonist, dopamine facilitator. It also inhibits viral M2 protein. So when it was initially started as antiviral prophylactic agent for avian influenza and influenza A virus, it was found later to cause reduction in symptoms in Parkinson's, echinacea, drug-induced extrapyramidal syndromes also. There's also another local drug repurposed as pamomycin. It is nothing but a protein synthesis inhibitor. It was aminoglycoside antibiotic used for both gram-positive, gram-negative bacteria. Now it is being used for the parasitosis, visceral leishmaniasis in Bihar and in India. It is officially repurposed drug in India currently. So let me, before going this drug repurposing logistics, first let me give you another example. Now if you see on the screen, we have a Lumicam here. This is nothing but bimatoprost ophthalmic solution. Bimatoprost was first originally intended for the patients having open-angle glaucoma. But it was also, the warnings also included the eyelash changes and the pigmentation of the eyes. Now, it was causing the patients who were using for open-angle glaucoma, it was causing increased length, thickness, and number of lashes in the patients. So when it was used for open-angle glaucoma patients in the 0.01% and 0.03%, with this side effect, it was trialed for the patients having hypotrichosis of the eyelashes. So later on, it is again, bimatoprost is again reintroduced as a formulation of 0.03%, that's slightly safe, for especially for the patients to treat hypotrichosis of the eyelashes by increasing their growth, including length and thickness and darkening. So if you can see these two things, the same compound, different formulations, different indication. This is nothing but one of the example of a drug repurposing. So why we have to study the drug repurposing? What's so greatness about it? Currently, around 30% of all the drugs, FDA approved drugs, are reposition drugs. So it's quite a larger share of the market which is having a drug repurposing. Apart from that, in 2015, the drug repurposing was supposed to be having a market value of $24.4 billion, which was having a projected growth of up to $31.3 billion in 2020. Now, if you want even a specific example for the pharmacoeconomic aspect of drug repurposing, we have finasteride, which was originally intended for use of benign prostatic hyperplasia. Later on, when finasteride was found to be useful for hair loss treatment, and it was indicated and approved for the hair loss treatment, it had a projection of $239 million in 2003 itself. So this drug repurposing is both efficacious, at the same time profitable. So with that background, let me get into the logistics of drug repurposing with the main differences from the traditional drug discovery. In the traditional drug discovery, we have generally 5 steps. I'm not going into the individual steps. I'm just as an overview of the traditional drug discovery steps. We have discovery and preclinical stage. We have safety review. We have clinical research. We have FDA review and FDA post-market safety mode. Whereas in the drug reposition, we have only 4 stages. First, you have to identify the compound, whether it can be used or it can be tried for any newer indication. Then you have to acquire the compound acquisition. Then we have the development. And then we have FDA post-market safety monitoring. With this, let's go a bit more detail into the differences among these two things. Coming to the time, it takes around 10 to 16 years, a decade and a half, sometimes even 2 decades, for the development of a newer drug in traditional method. Whereas in repurposing, you can cut down the time to as little as 3 years. Coming to the cost, right from the inception of the idea of the traditional drug development till its formulation or the release, it costs sometimes it can reach up to $12 billion. Whereas the drug repurposing can come down to maximum of $1.6 billion. Next, coming to the marketing, even when we develop a newer drug in a traditional method, to get the drug up to the table of the physician or into the pockets of the patients, we spend around $1.24 billion. Whereas in drug repurposing, that cost almost cut down to less than 60% because the drug is already in the market, has already been trialed and regulated by the clinicians or the physicians. Coming to the focus, for traditional drug discovery, we generally go to treat chronic and complex diseases where there is larger population involved, larger area of treatment of the possibilities. Whereas in the drug repositioning, we can identify or treat the rapidly emerging or re-emerging infectious diseases just like the recent COVID-19, and also difficult to treat diseases and neglected diseases, even orphan diseases. Even orphan diseases can be targeted and a strategic treatment can be produced for them using drug repurposing. I have kept it in tabular form. So if you observe the table on the slide, you can see that the time is cut down in drug repurposing, cost is cut down, marketing expenditure is cut down, and along with the focus, rather than the chronic and the complex disease, you can focus on any even minor, neglected, or the orphan diseases also using drug repurposing. This is just a figure to highlight that the drug repurposing is highly efficacious and a novel method to develop drugs for any newer indications of the diseases. Now, if you go with a risk-reward regimen, risk-reward graph for drug repositioning and the traditional method, in the drug repositioning, we have a lower risk of failure because the drug is already undergoing all the clinical phases. We just have to try for the newer phases, for the newer indication, with a very high reward time. Whereas in the traditional drug, the risk is very high. Even after marketing the drug, even after the drug reaches the patient, it may or may not sustain in the market. Just like thalidomide, even after so much of spending, it was withdrawn. Now it is being repurposed, that is altogether different story. But through the traditional method, the risk is high with the lesser value of reward when compared to the drug repositioning. So if we overall see the differences between traditional drug repositioning and drug repurposing, we have reduced time of development, we have lower cost of development, and also reduced risk of failure in the clinical development in the drug repositioning. If we see this figure, I have tried to keep all of them in one figure. If you see the traditional drug, you have to target-based or organism-based lead molecule you have to identify. You have to screen it, you have to identify the candidate molecule, then it undergoes a preclinical development, clinical development, then the registration, then the market. So all such a big process involved. But whereas if you come into the drug repurposing, all the steps are cut down. Basically, you just have to acquire the product. You have to just identify for a newer indication through any other approaches like in silico, serendipitous discovery, or experimental approach. You have to select the candidate drug, acquire it, develop for the newer formulation, and whether it is really helpful or it was any coincidental finding, you just have to go through it during the phases, and then you have to market for the newer indications. So if we can see itself, the drug repositioning provides a cut short method to develop drugs for the diseases. Now, if you go into the strategies, so how do you strategize the drug repurposing? There are basically two types of strategies. One is on target, the other is off target. If you're going to on target is we have a drug, it works on ABCD, for example, ABCD receptor. The same receptor is also involved in a pathogens of completely altogether different disease. So, with that same pathogenesis or mechanism of action, you can formulate the drug to a newer indication. That is nothing but on target. That is on similar target as the previous therapeutic indication. You can formulate a newer therapeutic indication. The best example for this is minoxidil. Minoxidil was first approved as an antihypertensive drug in 1979. But during minoxidil was found to be having a property of widening the blood vessels, opening potassium channels, allowing more oxygen, blood, and nutrients to the hair follicles. And it was this mechanism which was found to be used for the treatment of male pattern baldness, that is androgenic alopecia, which is approved in the year 1988. Now, if you come into the off target is both the target and the indication of the name. You have a drug. Previously, it was supposed to be like, for example, it used to work on ABC receptor. During the study or during any other clinical thing, you found that it also acts on some other completely altogether different way, different mechanism. That is nothing but off target. The best example of this is aspirin. Because previously used as an analgesic, now we are using it as an antiplatelet. So, okay, we have understood what are the drug repurposing, we have found the differences, we found the advantages, the pharmacoeconomic aspect, we know how to strategize it. But how do we approach drug repurposing? Drug repurposing is approached through three different methods. One is activity based or experimental approach, one is in silico approach, and another one is a mixed approach. So let's go in depth a bit about individual approaches. We have an experiment based approach. It is nothing but an activity based reposition. So, what does this basically mean? It means that you are screening the original drugs for the newer indication based on experimental assays that you do in vitro and in vivo disease models without requiring any structural information of the target proteins. That is, you are able to see the action, so you are trying for the new things. As you go through this approach using cell assay or animal model or a clinical approach also. Coming to the in silico repositioning, this approach carries out a virtual screening of public databases of huge drug or chemical libraries. And they use computational biology or bioinformatics or cheminformatics tools. They identify the potential bioactive molecules and based on which the molecular interaction between the drug molecule and the protein target, that is where the newer indication that you want to approve. There, the protein target, their interaction is seen and then they go forward. For this, the basic only drawback is you need to have a precise structure information both about drug targets and the disease-specific phenotypic or genotypic profiles. Everything you need to have basic, precise structure information. If you keep in a tabular form, we can see the activity-based is pretty experimental. In silico is a computation, this is virtual screening. Activity-based is target-based or cell organism-based, that is we do cell assays. Here we have protein target-based screening. No structural information required in activity, whereas structural information is a must in silico approach. But when compared to activity-based, in silico-based approach is time and also labor efficient. You may not have a larger manpower to do or larger structure or the lab facilities needed for in silico approach. But there is a higher rate of false positive hits during the screening of in silico, where it is lower on the false positive hits in the activity based. Now coming to the mixed approach. What is this mixed approach? It's nothing but a simultaneous application, both of a computational experimental methodologies in a systemic manner. That is what? The result of computational methods is validated by preclinical biological experiments. That is, you do an in vitro and in vivo test, then you confirm that thing the same with the computational methods. This is having a greater efficacy when compared to the other two methods because this is nothing but a foolproof method. You are confirming both with activity and in silico method. So it is having a much greater efficacy when compared to the other methods. So we have approach to a drug through drug repurposing. Next, what? How do we do? Depending on the quality and the quantity of pharmacological, toxicological, and the biological activity information available, we have three methodologies. One is drug oriented, another is target oriented, another is disease or therapy oriented. In this, we have The drug-oriented method, that is, this is nothing but a traditional pharmacology and drug discovery principles are applied, where studies are usually conducted to determine the biological efficacy of drug molecules without really knowing about their biological targets, resulting in orientation profile through serendipity or clinical application. Mind you, here, when I'm telling you without knowing the biological targets, that means even during the trials they can be found. But basically, the drug-oriented methodology relies upon having a serendipity or a clinical observation. One of the best examples found in this is nothing but the sildenafil. And there are many successes in this method, because once a drug reaches the physician, it is through him that we can get to know that what all the other indications can be used for this. Coming to next, target-based. Target-based is nothing but it comprises in silico screening or virtual high-throughput screening of the drugs of compound databases, where such as ligand-based screening or molecular docking, followed by in vitro and in vivo high-throughput screening of the drugs against a selective protein molecule or biomarker that is its target. So in confirming, though there are no success stories regarding that, but currently the success rate of identifying a newer drug is through this method. This is a target-based methodology. One of the best example that we have is a Fasotil. Fasotil is nothing but a rho kinase inhibitor. It is currently used for Raynaud's and ALS syndrome. It's also found to have alpha synchrone accumulation modifier. So currently it's also been approved for neurodegenerative disorders. Now coming to any other methodology, the third type of methodology, is a disease or therapy oriented. This is where this is used when there is more information on the disease model. Since it requires a construction of a specific disease network, recognizing the gene expression of that certain disease, considering the key targets of pathogenesis of that disease, and also identifying disease-causing protein molecules in that pathogenesis related to cell and metabolic pathways of interest. Now, this is generally guided by availability of information by various other branches of pharmaceutical chemistry like proteomics, genomics, metabolomics, phenotypic data, or pathogenetic conditions, adverse and side effects of the disease processes or the drugs involved. So based on that, if any drug is approved like this, that is known as disease or therapy-oriented methodology. Basically, the drug-based phenotypic screening and target-based methods account for more than 50% of the currently approved drug, small drug molecules, and the biologics. If we go an overview of what we have discussed so far, so in the methodology, we have phenotypic screening, we have new target or older indication, and we have newer indication, new target, old target, newer indication, all that thing undergoes. We undergo in silico screening of the drug molecule. We do in vitro screening, in vivo screening, then we go for the clinical trials, then we get the FDA approval, and the successful repurposed drug is formulated. Now, I have included some of the examples of the drug repurposing that have been so far approved by the FDA. So, coming to the best example out of all this, aspirin. Previously, it was used as an analgesic. Now, the current indication goes along with the antiplatelet action. It is currently also being prescribed for the colorectal cancer, because the COX-2 inhibition, the COX-2 which is overexpressed in colorectal cancers, the inhibition done by the aspirin, it has been promoting to decrease the inflammation and cell propagation of the cancer cells in the colorectal cancer. Now coming to this, another drug, celecoxib. Previously, it was used for osteoarthritis or rheumatoid arthritis. The newer indication goes that is a colon cancer, because it was found to be inducing apoptosis by inhibiting 3-phosphoinositide dependent protein kinase activity. Next, we have galantamine. Galantamine, we all know, it was previously indicated for neuromuscular paralysis. Now, it is used also for AT Alzheimer's disease, because it is an acetylcholinesterase inhibitor with mild agonist action on the nicotinic receptors. Next, we have already covered sildenafil. It was previously indicated for the pulmonary arterial hypertension and the angina. Currently, it's being used for electrolyte dysfunction. We all know it is because it inhibits the phosphodiesterase type 5 and thereby enhancing the cyclic GMP and mediating relaxation. The other drug, minoxidil, previously indicated for hypertension, now it's been indicated for androgenic alopecia by opening of co-potassium channels and enhancing the microcirculation. It's being currently indicated for the androgenic alopecia. Coming to the colchicine, the previous indication was the gouty arthritis. Mind you, one thing I would like to say, that previous indication still holds true for some of the drugs. Along with the newer indications, the drugs are being used even for the previous indications. So we have gouty arthritis. The current indications goes that pericarditis, because it was found to be having inhibition action on release of chemotactic factors and glycoproteins. Coming to folate, we all know it's a vitamin supplement. The newer indications is schizophrenia bipolar disorders, because it was found to be reducing the levels of homocysteine, that's amino acid, which was found to exacerbate some of the psychiatric symptoms. Next, we have methotrexate. The original indication was cancer. The newer indication goes by psoriasis and rheumatoid arthritis. It's a folate antagonist with the immunosuppressant action. We have carvedilol, which was originally indicated for the hypertension. Along with that, we are currently being used for Alzheimer's disease, because it was found to have possessing a strong anti-A-beta fibrillation activity, preventing neurotoxic interactions at dendritic spine and synapse level. We have tretinoin, which is nothing but a vitamin A supplement. Currently, the indication goes along with that acute promyelocytic leukemia, because it was found to promote cell differentiation of the cells and cause apoptosis upregulation genes activation among the cancer cells. We have eflornithine, which is initially used for hirsutism in the females. Now the new indication goes for the sleeping sickness, the West African trypanosomiasis, because it was found to have selective irreversible inhibition of ornithine decarboxylase, that is, it depletes the polyamines in trypanosomes, bringing them into a static state that renders them susceptible to the host immune activity. We have other drug known as orlistat, that was indicated for obesity. Now the current indication also goes along with that pancreatic cancer, because it was found to be having an inhibition action on gastric and pancreatic lipases, that is in the thioestrous domain of fatty acid synthesis in the cancer cells. We have thalidomide, we have already covered, along with the morning sickness, which is currently withdrawn. We have the newer indications of that of erythema nodosum leprosum and multiple myeloma. We have propranolol, which was indicated for hypertension. Now we are using it for migraine prophylaxis, infantile hemangiomas also. Other than that, one of the drugs, these are all the drugs which are already being used for some or other indication, then they were repurposed. Zidovudin is one of the drugs which stands as a testament that even failed drugs can be repurposed for the newer therapeutic indications. Zidovudin was first tried for the cancer, where it was found to be failed trial. Then the newer indications for using of for HIV or the AIDS treatment was found with the zidovudin. Now, with this, some of the examples, I have included maximum as possible as the approved drug. The COVID-19 drugs also come, but they were used under the emergency use authorization. Remdesivir, though it was first originally invented, later it was withdrawn. So that is whatever the examples that I have shown. They are currently approved drug repurposed drugs by the FDA. Now, basically, the one question that can crop up in anyone's mind is: so, what is the basic difference between the off-label and the drug repurposing? So, this is nothing. This sounds like an off-label, but this is not an off-label. In the drug repurposing, both there is a liability. That is, when you are repurposing a drug, you are putting forth into the medical community that certain drug can be repurposed for a newer therapeutic indication with a newer formulation or with an older formulation. So let's jump into a basic differences between off-label and the drug repurposing. Suppose if you come after the safety evidence, for the off-label use, you don't need any safety evidence. Basically, it goes word of mouth in a certain field of a specialty of medical field, that certain drug can be used for certain patients, then the physicians start using. So there is limited safety evidence when compared to the drug repurposing for the off-label use. In the drug repurposing, the phase 1 is already done. So there is a proper safety evidence available for the drug use. Coming to the efficacy, off-label use sometimes terms as a trial and error method. The drug may or may not work for some patients. It has worked for some of the other patients. So when the patient is being prescribed, it may or may not work. Whereas for drug repurposing, we'll be having adequate evidence that the drug is efficacious for the intended therapeutic indication. Coming to the clinical development, only some of the evidence can be found, like any clinical studies done by an institution that forms as an evidence for the off-label use. Whereas in the drug repurposing, we'll be having the specific regulatory requirements for the approval. Only then the drug can be labeled as a repurposed drug. So without these regulatory requirements, approval, and unless and until there is a clinical development shown in those regulatory requirements, the drug cannot be labeled as a drug repurposed. Coming to the investment, we all know that there is no investment required actually for the off-label use. It's only based on the clinician's purview that the drug will be, some of the drugs are used as off-label drugs, whereas in the drug repurposing, the investment required is medium. No, the reason why I have told the medium is when it compared to the traditional drug discovery or the traditional drug development, the amount of the investment required in drug repurposing is very less. We have already covered there's hardly any $1.6 billion in this. So it is medium, less than the required for a completely newer drug development. Coming to the development times, off-label use, you just need a word of mouth by the clinician to use certain drug for the off-label use. Whereas in the drug repurposing, it can be cut down to as little as 3 years, but sometimes it can extend up to 8 years or the 12 years. But it's medium, again, in a mid-range when compared to the traditional drug method. Coming to the patency protection, now this is where a pharmacologist or the pharmaceutical industry is quite interested. The patency protection, there is no patency protection for the off-label use. Any physician can use any drug based on his or her clinical observation as an off-label. But whereas the drug repurposing provides a patency protection for the newer indication. Suppose you have a drug ABC, which was already being used for some Z disease. Now I am trying to repurpose the drug for a Y disease. So if I show the repurpose potential, I can protect that thing. I can have a patency protection for the newer indication, even though the drug can also be already been under the patency protection or any other. Coming to the legal liability, for any off-label use, the physicians only are the legally liable. That is, if any ADR or any serious ADR occurs, the physician itself are liable. But whereas in the drug repurposing, both the manufacturer and the physician are legally liable. This is not a point of contention because basically once you do all the trials for the newer indication, so obviously that sort of protects, that sort of shows a legal protection for both the manufacturer and the physician. Coming to the risk, Indian law does not allow any off-label promotion of any drugs. But whereas a risk concerned with the drug repurposing, there are not as such specific guidelines under the NDCT rule in 2019, but it is much less when compared to the new drug. So with that background or the difference between the off-label use and the drug repurposing, I would like to tell some of the logistics required for the drug repurposing. There are many regulations in FDA, newer types of formulation. Whether if you are repurposing already patented drug, you will be having a somewhat coverage for any further years for the newer indication. In European nations, you can even suggest a newer pricing regimen for that newer drug regimen, a newer indication. But rather than going into all those logistics, which is again comes to around a very big plethora of discussion, one of the acts that I found very interesting under the US FDA was an open act. The commitment of FDA towards the drug repurposing can be understood through this open act. Open act is nothing but Orphan Products Extinction, now Accelerating Cures and Treatment Act of 2017. So it is nothing but it would authorize the FDA to designate a drug, including biological product, as a drug approved for a newer indication to prevent, diagnose, or treat a rare disease or condition, provided among other things that prior to approval of an application or supplementary application for the newer indication, the drug was approved and licensed for marketing, but was not approved or licensed for the newer indication. So if you want to project a newer indication for an orphan diseases, the FDA provides a completely different, safe, open act method for people who are interested in research for formulation of a drugs as a drug hyperposing regimen for a rare or the orphan diseases. Apart from that, I also found one of the very curious thing under the FDA, that's a Cure ID. Cure ID was an internet-based data repository which was started in 2013 by FDA and also National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences, which is basically part of National Institute of Health. So what does it do? It is nothing, actually it was developed with the support from Infectious Disease Society of America, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and World Health Organization. So what is basically this Cure ID? Cure ID is nothing but a platform where suppose different nations peoples are using certain drugs for certain diseases. For example, if you take the recent COVID-19, there are multiple nations, multiple physicians trying out different methods for the patients. If some of the drugs were found to be efficacious, they can put forth their research or their knowledge gained or their clinical experience in this Cure ID. So basically, this Cure ID is where the physicians share the cases, communicate, and also access information. This basically serves a purpose as a basement or the foundation for identification of the newer drug molecules for drug repurposing trials. So what they do? Here they share the cases where they report their own cases and read cases from other clinicians also around the world of neglected infectious diseases with no sufficient approved therapies. Suppose, for example, Ebola, there was no proper treatment for the Ebola. So once the patients in trials, the cases sharing was happening, the newer drugs or newer modalities of treatment for the Ebola were found. Similarly, for any other uprising neglected infectious diseases, the clinicians can report their own findings through this QID. And also they can communicate among themselves. This is, they can engage directly with the communities of disease experts around the world. At the same time, they can even access information. Suppose if I am a clinician in some corner of India and I don't know what can also be used in even in the first place, I can access through QID to find out or to choose among many drugs available which are not approved. Now, these are the cases where there is no approval of the drugs was found for any diseases. And I can access the information and use for my own patients or something like that. This is the interface of the QID that I've taken from the internet. Mind you, here, once you try to upload an information, it does not directly go onto the platform. It is first scrutinized by the moderators, and when the data presented by you is found to be authentic or correct as per the guidelines, then only they will be projecting it on the QID platform. So what were the goals of the QID? It was to enhance the understanding of newer uses of approved medicinal products for a newer indication, to facilitate clinical trials and the drug development, and to serve as a resource for physicians to share information where no FDA-approved drug or which has been proven to be safe and effective exists for the newer use or for a newer disease. With that, I would like to wrap up basic advantages of the drug repurposing. The drug repurposing, among many advantages already possess, they can be useful for application of rare diseases, diseases that have become resistant to the current treatment options, or to promote a drug which is found to be very efficacious and off-label to a labeled use, to a proper approved labeled use, and to also it can also serve as a base for the precision medicine for certain conditions. So with that, let me try to overall the drug repurposing strategy. We have main 3 steps. You have to first the molecule or the subject A substance should be suggested for the mentioned indication. We have to make sure that it has a preclinical models, including animal computation models, should be assessed for the newer indication, and the efficacy of the medication should be analyzed through various trials, and then apply and market the drug as per the newer indication. We've just projected this figure to make understand the basic differences between the traditional drug development and the drug repurposing. So in the tradition, you have drug discovery and preclinical safety review, clinical research phase 1, clinical research phase 3, FDA review. Then it passes, then it goes for the FDA post-market safety model. Whereas all these steps are cut down in the drug repurposing. You just have to identify the compound, acquire the compound, develop the compound for the newer indication, and that's all. You can track it and sell it for the post-market safety monitoring. With that, one line I would like to say that the drug repurposing is nothing but teaching an old drug somewhat new tricks for a newer magic. Yes, you can teach an old drug new tricks. With that, I would like to conclude my session. Thank you, and I really do hope that I have been fruitful in shining a small light if possible on drug repositioning.
Oh, thank you very much, Shweta. It was really enlightening session. It was really good. You went through the each and every good amount of aspects related to the repurposing of drugs. Now, before getting into the question and answer session, I would like to have our co-chairperson for the meeting, Lini. So Lini will be Lini Subin. She is the Mrs. Lini Subin. She is the founder and CEO of scientific. Let's see, Silmed Scientific. Let me just project the slide about her, and I will just little bit introduction about Lini will be it is important. She is an accomplished regulatory affair professional with all of you are able to see the presentation, I hope. Can you
Yes,
see?
sir.
Yeah, please.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Yeah. So Lini Subin is the senior regulatory expert and founder of Silmed Scientific Company. She is accomplished with regulatory affairs for more than 2 decades, and she worked in various companies before opening her own company, and she has been instrumental in end-to-end regulatory dossier development and approvals of many molecules. And currently she is doing dossier development, CMC, clinical and non-clinical dossiers preparation, regulatory global strategy of generic drugs, new drugs, and generic fixed dose combinations, and so many things. So now I would like to, she's also involved in regulatory dossier due diligence, and then scientific advice meetings and briefing packages preparation, and also controlled correspondence with the regulators. So she is a very seasoned regulatory expert. Now I request her to take us through some of the regulatory aspects of drug repurposing, if she can. So Lini, do you want me to project the slides, or you are able to do it?
Maybe you can project it. It's fine.
Okay, I will do it.
Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. Murthy, for extensive introduction. I'm very much privileged to be part of this webinar that is arranged by CDSIMER team and Medical Pharmacology Society. Dr. Pratibha ma'am, I'm very happy to involve in this discussion. And Dr. Shweta, you presented very nicely. I think you covered most of the repurposing areas from the pharmacology point of view, as well as from the FDA perspective. I think you covered a lot. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're able to see the presentation, Lini?
Yes, I can see.
Yeah. So shall I go to the next slide?
Okay, yeah.
Yes, now you can speak.
Okay, so I'm just giving you a brief introduction or a brief overview from the industry regulatory perspective regarding the drug repurposing, because Dr. Shweta had already covered most of the areas. So this drug repurposing, this is an emerging area in the pharmaceutical industry. There are a lot of opportunities and a lot of roles in the rare medicines area, especially, you know, there where there is high unmet medical need. We have seen that in the case of COVID, you know, there were a lot of all the physicians were struggling for finding treatment options in different clinical conditions. So we know that lot of trials or a lot of off-label trials were also happening at the time of COVID, and a lot of new medicines as well as existing medicines were undergoing this investigations during the COVID time. So of course, the drug repurposing is going to have a great role in the pharmaceutical industry in the coming future. And then one more point I need to highlight is that, especially in the high unmet need, the development in a timely and a cost-effective manner, that will definitely give benefit to the patients, okay? And also will give additional therapeutic options. Though we already seen, let me highlight what could be the candidates for the drug repurposing. These could be drugs in clinical development that have failed to demonstrate efficacy for a particular indication during phase 2-3 trials, but have no major safety concerns. This is one target. And then another could be the drugs that have been discontinued for commercial reasons. Sometimes it happens like, the drug is already approved but not launched because of the financial aspects or some other reasons or some other market regulations. So we can target that kind of products as well. And then another could be drugs, patents are close to expiry or already off patent and non-released drug candidates. So I think most of these are from the off-label or off-patent drugs that are undergoing drug repurposing. And then the most common target that are well.
Lini. Please unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. I'm not sure you heard me very well.
Yeah, just start. I think only few sentences only.
Okay, so we were talking about what could be the candidates for the this drug repurposing. I was just mentioning this could be well-established molecules or the off-patent ones, or those could be already in approved, but those are discontinued due to commercial reasons. And then another could be those drugs in the clinical development may have failed. We have done a lot of early stage trials and successfully completed preclinical and to some extent the clinical, and then failed in efficacy. So those molecules could be considered for drug repurposing. And we have already seen Dr. Shweta explained regarding the approaches and strategies for the drug repurposing, including the artificial methods or experimental methods or biological methods. But let me highlight one point here. The major being, since most of the participants are from the pharmacology background, let me highlight that the literature mining or systematic literature role search that plays the key role in any of the drug repurposing and approval. 1 second. Yeah.
This
So
is
now,
fine?
yes, it is fine.
Okay. Can I go to next slide? Hello?
Just a moment, just stay on that one. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
We already seen the advantage of the drug repurposing. We have seen it will save the cost, it will save the time. And then again, when it comes to the regulatory stage, we have to demonstrate quality, safety, and efficacy. So here what happens is that, as Dr. Shweta explained, most of the toxicology is already established, or the clinical pharmacology is already established. So we don't have to do any non-clinical development or to great extent of the clinical development in this case. So only quality data, that also for approved product, quality data is already there. So very less effort is needed for the drug repurposing. This is the main advantage of the drug repurposing. And then regarding the novel use also, most of the data sometimes there is in the literature. So we need to do the thorough literature investigation. And then again, we talk about off-label use also sometimes. But when it comes to regulatory or industry perspective, we talk about FDA or we talk about European Medicines Agency, bringing these indications to the patient, that has to go through rigorous regulatory processes. So that means this is relevant only when the new indication you are bringing is going to be there in your label, or if in Europe we say summary of product characteristics, or in general terms we say package insert, or we say product information. So this is going to be approved. This is the one the patient is referring, or the clinicians or the doctors are referring for the indication. So if it is approved, this will reflect in your product information. Otherwise, this repurposing strategy is not going to be any use. And you know that off-label use, that is going to bring harm to the patient. So we need to bring it very systematically. We need to demonstrate the data, especially with respect to safety and efficacy, and you go for the filing. So for FDA drug approval and marketing, the sponsor need to submit a new drug application. Since we have most of the data and there is an innovator product, already we say in FDA, we say reference listed drug or RLD. Some of you must be already familiar with that. So with respect to RLD, we can show some data is similar to that, and only this new use that we need to demonstrate. So this will be an abridged application we call 505(b)(2) in most of the cases. And then if you consider Europe, then again, this is an abridged application. There are different roads. It all depends on, your strategy, because what the use and, what data you are bringing in. And it's already off patented, or if it's a combination, then there is another kind of strategy. But for normal generic molecules, it's a hybrid application we call 10.3. Article 10.3 in Europe, it's a hybrid application. That means a bridge. Not we don't have to have the full dossier for such submissions. So whatever we are discussing pharmacologically, or from the clinical perspective, this is going to bring effect to the patient when it's go to the regulatory approval procedure, and we submit it for the approval and reflect that in the label. And then coming to the repurposing strategy, we have seen detailed repurposing strategy already. But let me tell you, there are some scope within EMA or FDA. So that with respect to that, the scope is very limited. So any target you are bringing, that should have some conditions. And currently the scope is listed here. As you can see, the new indication to be in a condition distinct to currently authorized indication. So it should be clearly distinguishable from the existing, not related to the existing. It should be clearly distinct. That is one condition. And then second is that to target an area where significant public health benefits, or the health authority seeing some interest that will help the patients. This happens, even I have worked in recent years. There are some areas or some medicines that not necessary that this should be the rare diseases or any infectious diseases. In some areas, especially the critical medicines that is giving to the pediatric or some advanced stage cancer, or agency shows some interest in some areas from their side itself, and they approach the well-established companies to develop such target. So I personally involved recently in some of the such standard therapies and repurposing that for to some of the patient populations or some areas. So this is a great area, the thing is that the agency should be convinced. We should be able to see there are some significant public health benefits in that. And the third point, you will see there should be a valid marketing authorization for the medicinal product out of basic patent or SPC protection or data market exclusivity period is over. It's already we have seen, Dr. Shweta explained. If we approach EMA or FDA, it should be the repurpose means it should be on the existing or approved products. We are taking it for a new indication. I hope it's clear. And then there should be supporting evidence. That means the proof of concept. Okay. At least when you approach FDA or EMA, there should be an initial indication, okay, this target is okay. We have seen some of the computational tools or how this approach should be or strategies should be, we already have seen. But the concept should be very proof. And then the data should be from the clinical trials or, the reported case studies. Again comes the literature search and systematic review in picture. So there is a huge scope in that as well for, the pharmaceutical companies, the clinicians or the pharmacologists, you can take on initiatives in bringing this up, because if you are the one referring more of these data on a day-by-day basis than us. We take it, the industry take it only when there is a need from the company or from the sponsor or from the authority. Otherwise, we are not referring on a day-to-day basis these kind of literatures. And then the clinicians, you can report the case studies. The QRID platform, Madam had already explained, the clinicians can report these cases. So if someone is searching at later stages, they will get these targets. So there is a great significance. So these are the normal targets and then the scope for the drug repurposing generally considered by the authority, especially the leading regulatory authority. Now, so we have seen this regulatory initiative, few we have already seen, but let me tell you that this drug repurposing concept is getting popularity. Most of the agencies are on it already. There is no clear guidance specifically to repurposing yet, but FDA and EMA had taken so many initiatives on this. Some of these is like, EMA and FDA both launched some platforms to support that. Also, EMA is having a pilot project. There they are involving academy, industry people to involve in such drug repurposing, and that will later undergo a great scrutiny. And EMA, that particular program from EMA is like that. They are giving continuous support to the pharmaceutical companies. That means you starting from the beginning, you are starting the target, you identify a target. From that moment itself, you notify the EMA, then you can have continuous support from EMA in form of guidance or discussions like that. And the QRID platform by FDA, we have already seen. Can you move to the next slide? Okay, since I'm talking about regulatory, because that is more relevant for me, you can see the regulatory pathway. Yeah, we have seen extensively what is happening inside this development. We have already seen, but let me tell you the regulatory stages or the drug repurposing stages. Yeah, there is a pre-entry. If you take any platform, for example, I told you there is FDA related platform, curated platform is there. There could be some other private platforms as well. So the first stage is a pre-entry. That means you have a new indication interest that you notify the authority. And then you make proposals and you submit that to the authority for discussion. Okay, you are informing, okay, there are particular form in EMA as well to report that indication target. So this is the stage where you initiate the drug repurposing, that initial stage of the discussion with the authority. And now, once you request, then you are going through the this regulatory pathway, the scientific advice through FDA or EMA or national authority. So what happens is that whatever data you are submitting at the very initial stages, it's not approval stage, very initial stages, that will be reviewed by the health authority, and we can agree for some actual meetings. Face-to-face is possible as well. And then, we can have video conference or conference call also sometimes. So we can arrange meetings. So what happens is that at this stage, EMA or FDA or National Health Authority provide you the recommendations regarding the gaps on the data, or initially, like, okay, this target is okay. There could be multiple scientific advice as well. This is a separate procedure within Europe and FDA. Especially in the drug development stages, you can have multiple discussions with the authority and debate the benefits. You see that there is some benefit, but it should be, the risk benefit should be clarified to the authority. So here you can debate all the claims and whatever development you have done. So this is the stage where we get a lot of support from EMA. And one thing I didn't highlight much is that this drug repurposing is having its own challenges. Huge challenges, because if you focus on the established molecule, well-established molecule, you know that hardly few companies or companies may not be ready to invest much on this very established molecule, because the final benefit you won't get that much when it comes to the price of the medicines. So there could be a lot of challenges, but then this could be promising. So the scientific advice discussion in this regard is very relevant. So agency might even tell you can avoid some studies depending on the suitability and the data you submit. And then next stage is the dossier development and the clinical phase. We have to follow the company advice. Company has to follow the health authority advice. And then, we have to generate the clinical evidence, whatever additional. In most cases of the drug repurposing, we already have most of the safety and efficacy data. So it might be just the bridging data. Sometimes it could be even just the bioequivalent studies. That means in the literature itself, you will be getting most of the pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic information. Even drug-drug interactions and most of the studies should be there in the literature itself. So it's not when it comes to some molecules, well-established molecule, it's very simple. If we identify the target, it's very simple. And then it's only the regulatory hurdle, like submitting to the authority and demonstrating it and then getting the approval. But the one thing is very clear. If we have to take such innovative or different steps, we have to have close communication with the regulatory authorities. Then only these kind of discussions and novel development and will reach to the successful marketing authorization or a license. And the next stage, the regulatory submission, we have to identify the correct regulatory route. As I mentioned already in the licensing, with respect to FDA, this is an abridged. With respect to EMA also, mostly this is an abridged application. But in EMA and all, there could be additional routes also depending on the molecule and whether it is a combination drug or any other. And sometimes you don't have to go through the full procedure. If it is an already approved drug, it could be just an extension procedure, or sometimes a variation. You have to submit a change to the currently approved license. So it could be a simple procedure as well. No need to go through the full regulatory approval procedure that is taking 2 years, 1 to 2 years normally, because it depends on the target or what indication you are filing. and what is the product you are bringing it. So there is a strategy involved in that. And then the approval, and then comes the post-approval phase. In the post-approval phase, mainly we are focusing on the life cycle changes. You can even correct the indications depending on you gain experience. And one thing I haven't highlighted earlier could be like the growing popularity with respect to real world evidence. So that is something we can exploit here as well. We can avoid some studies with the real world experiences, gathering data on the real world use of these molecules. And in the post-approval phase, even we can previously, based on previous discussions with the authority, we can even agree to conduct some studies after the product is in market. Based on the real use, we can even agree to conduct some studies after the approval, and then comes the ADR and other kind of monitoring. So basically, the drug approval process is similar to any new medicine, but here the difference is that we are going for a short process because of we have already established evidence and some information. And sometimes even the regulatory approval timeline could be shorter depending on the target or the product we are going to file. And now we are very happy to tell you that at Silmet Scientific we are already through some of the drug repurposing activities. I think over the last 4 years we involved in many repurposing strategies. Especially we are doing some literature mining and literature strategy reports for our clients. And we provide a strategy. If we see that, okay, there are great information in the clinical and the safety side, we provide a strategy, what could be the regulatory route, and then, what bridging studies should be needed and what quality studies are needed. And then the next step is the dossier development. We are also assisting our clients with the dossier development, the end-to-end dossier development. And then we also successfully involved in some of the scientific advice meetings and the discussions with many of the European authorities. A briefing book is something we present our information to an authority in any of the developmental discussion. So we have great experience in preparing briefing books with the support of the medical and non-clinical experts only, and the quality expert, myself a quality expert already. So we are doing that as well. And then we are also involved in regulatory submissions, and we provide regulatory assistance as well. So that's what I want to tell you. As I already pinpointed, we had a very good topic. I'm happy to collaborate with the Medical Pharmacology Association and the CDSIMER team. You have brought up a very good topic. There are a huge scope, but there are challenges, and of course the regulatory hurdles, but sometimes it could be even simple, especially when we collaborate. So I would say the collaboration is the key, and we have to take more efforts in bringing the off-label use to label use. There are much efforts involved. And whatever available platforms, we haven't mentioned many, but there are, even if you look at EMA, the European wide, there is, some might have already heard of the Horizon project, and some other associations in Europe is there. So they are working for medicines for all platforms are there. Remedy for all platform, there is one another platform, and then there are some private corporations. So much of the effort is needed. And then, of course, there is a huge scope in that. And thank you once again for all.
Oh, thank you very much, Lini. It was really a very good session on regulatory aspects and experience. So it was really nice to hear about your experience in managing drug repurposing, and so many activities what you have been doing already. And also you dealt with what are the regulatory requirements and how to proceed to the filing the application. I think we discussed from Shweta's discussion which was very, in detail about the how to identify the lead, and then you talked about the, how to file and how to succeed this. It was really nice. Thank you very much, both the speakers, for joining me. And now, Shweta, I have one question for you.
Sure,
So would
sir.
you, if you are fine to answer, actually, I would like to ask you, which are the drugs which we should not consider for, even though maybe they are found to be beneficial, which drugs we should not consider for going ahead with the repurposing? Do you have any examples or anything?
I think, sir, for things which are having already been found or serendipitous observation already approved on a very minor with minor data or emergency use approved drugs, I think they will be very much risky to undergo for the drug repurposing strategies.
Maybe, like I would like to add a note here. The drugs which are known to have, addicting, like morphine or like pethidine or related groups. Because, like if they are already having drug dependence or abuse liability are there, maybe, those drugs may be excluded, even though they are found to be beneficial. Maybe, they need to take a cautious steps towards, going ahead with the development. And one more is that, like those drugs which are found to have drug interactions, too much of drug
Yeah.
interactions, or too much of, variability is there, or, like considering the, their variability, I think it's difficult to predict their activity, or like, monitoring their activity is difficult, or those which drugs are having narrow therapeutic range. Maybe, we'll have to have a, cautious steps while going through these drugs for repurposing. Do
Yes,
you
sir. They
agree?
definitely, yes, sir. They definitely poses a very much higher risk when you are trying to repurpose a drug for any other indication, because ultimately it derives to, it comes down to availability of the drug more in the market to the patient
Yeah.
when it is repurposed. Sir, with
Okay.
that, actually, I would like to answer two queries in the chat they have asked.
Yeah.
So, actually, thank you for everyone who has posted a very thank for nice comments regarding the presentation. Apart from that, there was a doubt from Dr. Sandhya. She was asking for some examples on whose side effects made them to repurpose accordingly. Ma'am, we have one of them as a bimetoprost, where we was first used for open angle glaucoma. Then it was later when the hypertrichosis was found of the eyelashes. It was later on approved for the hypotrichosis of the eyelashes, and also mifepristone. Mifepristone, when they were found the side effect of having abortion in the female subjects, then they approved it for an anti-abortion. And there was another query from Dr. Honsil Parekh. He was asking whether it's a drug repurposing different from reverse pharmacology or a part of it. Sir, if that has to be considered, I consider a drug repurposing an altogether different part than the reverse pharmacology, because reverse pharmacology includes a part of the traditional medicine. Like for example, we are finding nowadays turmeric capsules. Previously, we never used to have turmeric capsules or vitamin C capsules. So, with the part of the reverse pharmacology, once we have seen a bedside application of turmeric or any traditional medicine from Giloy or anything like that, once we have seen the application in locally available traditional medicine and the knowledge, we have applied that to a clinical thing. Now the trials are undergoing. None of those drugs are yet approved. But whereas the drug repurposing specifically undertakes the drug which have already been formulated, which have already undergone the preclinical stage, where the chemical or the scientific knowledge is currently available with those drugs, about those drugs. Whereas in the reverse pharmacology, you can take any drug from Ayurvedic, Unani, homeopathy, wherever it is feasible. It has already been approved in the traditional medicine. It bridges the gap between the reverse pharmacology, bridges the gap between the tradition and the current modern drug development and the usage. So, if we can say we can use reverse pharmacology to make the drugs as drug repurposing, but I would like to say they both are different entities when it comes down to the regulatory approvals or the strategics or the computational information that you need on both the aspects.
Okay. Any other questions are available for discussion? I think if no further questions are there, first of all, I would like anyone. Yeah, please.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Is there any role for academia in the discovery of like usage of this type of drugs, that is drug repurposing? Because usually most of the clinical trials are like usually done nowadays in the academic tertiary care centers. But
Yes.
for this drug repurposing, what is the role of academicians?
Yeah. Do you want
Sir,
to answer?
yes, sir. I would like to. I think I can answer. If I'm not, I would like to take help from anyone if possible. So, what the academicians, I think we provide a much greater use, sir, in drug repurposing. For example, if you're telling the accommodation means the pharmacological departments of various medical colleges, I think we form one of the important source to identify any new uses for the drugs, because it is through us that undergoes pharmacovigilance first thing. Basically, most of these drugs side effects are being repurposed. So it is through us that we can identify the side effects, which can further be identified as in newer indications. That is one thing. And second thing is the clinicians. So clinicians is basically they depend most on the pharmaceutical industries for any newer formulations or anything like that. I think it's academicians who provide a rather higher input in regarding their mechanism of action or any other thing. And whenever a clinician finds an off-label use, I think he'll be the first person to refer to the academician regarding to know the various target points or sites of certain drug, so that to know whether to the current off-label use that the clinician has found among his patients was just a coincidental finding, or was it one of the key pharmacological intervention of the said drug?
Let me add one more point here. The pilot project I mentioned by EMA, that is specifically for academia and not for profit organization. Especially EMA had set up an expert group for the repurposing, and this pilot project that is already started. So academia is having great role in that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening.
Sir,
Okay.
are you satisfied with the answer?
Yeah. I think, like actually academicians are really having very important role, because see, now currently, even though after 13 years of experience in the industry, I joined academia as an academician. I'm seeing that, like you can see that, when I was in industry, I could not publish so many articles, but in the last 3 years, I have published more than 10 articles. Understanding the various adverse drug reactions or any research related activities. I believe that academicians are really having very important role, especially in bringing the unknown science to the mainstream. Hello. Yeah. So what I was talking is that it's very important that physicians and the academicians need to be very vigilant and take their opportunity, that is the God-given opportunity, to go to the wards and meet patients and attend the wards, and then like extract the information or even review the existing case sheets available in the records room. So in this way, I think they can extract real-time evidence and then bring it. Actually, if you ask me, we don't require too much of money to do the research. If we can go back to the case sheets and then review through the case sheets and make important notes, and we will be able to bring out very important information serendipitously, without spending too much of money. We will be able to come up with so many publications or knowledge to the mainstream. So thank you very much, Dr. Raghu, for asking this question, which fueled so many discussions. Anyone else?
Hello, sir. Good evening.
Yeah, please.
Sir, it was very good overall presentation, sir. But one thing which I would like to know, as far as drug repurposing is concerned, how just we can hope the off-label medication used as far as the drug repurposing is concerned?
Shweta, do you want to take it?
Actually, I didn't understand the question. I wanted to
Can
ask
you
the
repeat,
speaker once again.
Sapna Kesri?
Well, actually, the question is how can we cope the use of off-label medication as far as drug repurposing is concerned?
How can we cope? What is the scope of off-label use in drug repurposing, if I am correct, right? Now? Okay.
Sir, I think the off-label use that we find, see, sometimes the off-label use depends on the geographical locations, the genetic composition of the patient population also. So whenever you find an off-label use of any drug, you have to correlate the same off-label use if it is found in any other geographical locations with any other subset of populations. And you need to have a proper literature search, because without literature search, I think that provides, it's just like a blind, something you are striking up in a blind, in the dark. So once you have a literature proof, along with that, you publish the papers. And if you see, if you have similar off-label use finding anywhere, any location, you can correlate. And with that, you can conduct a basically a pilot stage or something like that. Then you can go forward with your whatever, but the basic computational or in silico approach to ascertain that whatever the off-label coincidental finding that we have seen or the clinician has seen, it was not just a purely coincidental. There was some scientific proof to that. And after that, you can take up trials and get it registered, take up the trials. And if successful, then they can be it can be found as an approval drug for the newer indication. That's a drug repurposing.
Yeah, so I would like to add one more note here. If you go back to Helsinki Declaration, WMA, they have published so many versions, and if you see the in most of the versions, it is mentioned that whatever sometimes if physicians think that it is beneficial to the patient, you can use the drug off-label, especially in special circumstances, but in such situations you need to publish the outcome of that. Okay, you need to observe carefully, record your observations, and publish it as a case study, which may act as the which can be the one of the hypotheses for our future research. So we don't recommend off-label use, but physicians do it. Many majority of the physicians do it because of their experience, but they don't publish it. That is not correct, actually. Whenever they use off-label, and whether it is positive or negative, whether it is good or bad, they should publish it. And hello, who is this? Sharan Reddy, please can you mute? Okay. Sharan Reddy, please can you mute? Okay, so what I was saying that whenever when you see the off-label use, please do document it and publish as a case study, and that will really be beneficial to the many physicians as well as patients, and also for the future humankind, because someone like us, they will start doing the research.
Thank you so much for your relevant information. And sir,
So
will
one
we get
thing I would
Yes.
like to add one more point to that, sir.
Yes, yes, please.
Actually, it's in this aspect, if you really want to identify, suppose a drug is there with you, your clinician has found some of the uses of that, the off-label use or any other circumstantial or coincidental findings, if you have found in any other location, can be found through the CureID platform, which I have shown the on the PPT. Yeah, if you go and search in the CureID platform, that can form one of the source. I'm not telling that is the only source that can be found. Obviously, the literature search takes a top priority. Apart from that, the CureID platform can serve as a basis to look for whether there are any other findings for similar off-label use.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Lini, you have a comment? Please go ahead.
Yeah. So from the regulatory point of view, if your target is to bring this off-label use to the market, then of course, this off-label use, you have to do a literature search, as Shweta mentioned, and then you conduct a due diligence and what additional studies to be needed, and then develop your product, formulate it, generate the studies, submit to the authority for approval. This is how you need to proceed.
Thank you.
Shweta ma'am.
Yes, please go ahead.
Sir,
Just I have one more doubt, sir.
Who is this?
Sure, sir.
Since can we do a patenting for a off-label use of a drug?
No,
Yeah.
for the off-label use of a drug, there is no patency protection or anything. You have to approve through the proper regulatory framework. Then only you can be patent. It can be patency protected.
Maybe I would like to comment here. Actually, like if you know that that product is someone else's property, okay. Suppose if you have already, if you are if you have found a off-label use of it, and then you have only an opportunity to you publish it or inform the owner of it, because the drug is the property of someone and they may not allow you to go and file a patent against their molecule. Okay, they
Because
will it will be a infringement of their property. Okay. Because you are using that property because they have registered in the market and they have filed all their studies with the regulatory agencies. So I don't think you can patent in any way. What you can do is that you can take that molecule, you can use this off-label, then you can develop your own molecule based on this science using further docking studies or something else. And maybe if you come up with your own product, maybe you can do. Maybe Lini, you have a comment on this?
If it is off-label, it could be difficult to get the patent as valid. All it depends on a patent evaluation. You should approach an attorney and see that is there any scope for a patent, and then you have to substantiate. You have to provide all the inputs, and then you need to substantiate your claims. There is a scope for a claim, then only you will get it patented.
And ma'am, I have this one, like any new process can be patented. That is what I heard. So that's because since it is entirely new, because although the drug after 20 years, it will become a generic and any company can do that one. Just I had a doubt that after this part, so whether since it is a new process, entirely new indication, can we do it?
Yeah, I would like to comment here, maybe because see what is happening, since I have been working in this area since last 20 years. Like what I'm saying is that suppose you have an idea on an off-patent product, then maybe you can develop a new formulation or new method of delivery or something like that. But I don't think you can have a process patent, not the product patent, because product has been already patented by someone. Maybe in a different route of administration or something like that. Maybe if you want to file an application for a generic, or like what do you say? That's a repurposed generic or something like that. Or maybe you can work on that. Maybe through a different route, or like if it is available as oral, maybe you are going for transdermal or something else, then it's a different generic and different route of administration. You may get some kind of protection for that.
Yeah.
Sir, I would like to add one point to that.
Yes, please go ahead.
Sir, regarding this doubt, the new, whatever, even if you are applying for patency, it will be applied for the newer therapeutic indication, not for the previous therapeutic indication. And even before you market, you have to take a proper approval. If you need any further information, you can approach through applications of 501 and 502 of US FDA also, if you need any further information regarding this patency.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So I think, is there any further questions are there? Anyone quickly, 1 or 2 questions? Sunita, yes, Patil, I think he or she wanted to speak.
Yes, sir. Just I want one advice that in our medical college, there is a project which is submitted, which is on chondrocyte. They are removing the cartilage from the joint, and the chondrocyte they will be developing or culturing it and this developed chondrocytes, again, they will be replacing in the joints of the same patient for increasing the regeneration of the cartilage. So, so is this included as a stem cell study, or it's not a stem cell? It is not coming under stem cell, or it is under stem cell. So that is the query which is there in our ethical committee.
Okay.
I think that we need to look at more specifically. Mostly it could be stem cell, but need more data to support that, and need to review the data actually.
Okay, but then if we want to ask, can we ask the higher authorities? So what is the scenario of who will be answerable? Like if we want to proceed further.
Firstly,
I think, on off-label, what I would say, offline, maybe Lini, you can take it, because, I think it's entirely a different subject.
Yeah.
Maybe, you can connect with, Lini. We just showed our phone number and email ID. Maybe, even if you ask me also later, I can give you her number. Maybe you can offline, you can take that, because stem cell is something, it's a broader area. And which requires much more discussion. Maybe we will take up in the next future, if we have some good speaker, we'll try to bring them. And then one more person, Dr. Kunal Sharma, wanted to speak, I believe. Dr. Kunal? Anyone else? Okay.
So there was one doubt by Dr. Mahindra Kumar Jaiswal in the chat box. Like, is there any legal issue with case reporting of off-label use in India? Sir, I would like to ask you first whether it is an ADR case reporting or you are using a therapeutic efficacy case reporting. Which among those two things you are speaking about?
Okay. Maybe I will answer both. Okay.
Sure. That's better.
See, if it is ADR, I think there is no legal problems associated with that. They can easily report. Okay. They can easily report the ADRs related to the drug use. Suppose if it is a off-label use for the benefit of a patient, in that case also they can report that, which I already mentioned as per the Helsinki Declaration. Suppose an accidental use, there can be a chance that person wanted to do something else, or something happened and someone consumed something and something happened. Suppose if they find such things also, they can easily report that also. Okay. I don't think for reporting, most importantly, if you want to do a case report, most importantly you need to take the consent of the patient. That is most important. Okay, so most importantly you need to take the consent of the person. Please mute Ramesh and who is this RN. Okay, so what I was talking is that, suppose like if you want to do a case report, most importantly you need to take the case consent of the person, patient, and also you need to get the approval from your hospital board. Okay, maybe hospital safety board or a committee or a scientific review board. Sometimes ethics committee or approval is also required. Most of the journals, they don't require ethics committee approval for publishing a case report, but it is always a good idea to go for the case ethics committee approval and then go ahead with it. So I think in that way, in all the manners, there is no legal actions that can be taken on a doctor for reporting a case. And that too, publishing a case in the, and it should be anonymous, like you should not identify the person by name or their place or anything. So you should, there should not be any, identifiables. It should be anonymous, and I don't think there will be any legal issues.
And let me add here, this is the case with India, but for other regions, I don't think there is any legal responsibility in reporting, because normally what happens, the company who is having the approvals or they are marketing the products in the local markets are having the legal responsibility to report it. So that is through their official systems that is connected to the approval, say license number or something. So off-label is not in question in any other market like Europe or FDA, in actual practice.
Okay, I think we have come to the end of the program. So thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Ashok, our principal and dean. He has kindly accepted to give the platform, that is the Zoom account of our college, and Dayanand Sagar University, who encouraged us to conduct these kind of programs, and I would like to thank all the participants. More than 300 participants registered in less than I would say 72 hours. It was the one of the record registration which we received, and it's mainly because of like I can't ignore Dr. Shweta, who proposed this topic. She is the most important person as far as this is concerned. And Lini, I would like to thank Lini. She has actually, I did not even ask her. I told her that I am putting your name, you will be there. She kindly accepted. She's so nice, and she made her. I told her, please prepare few slides. She prepared a very nice 15-20 minutes presentation, which went on very nicely. And I thank all the participants. Like I could see that almost 100, 120, 130 participants throughout the presentation. They were always online, 130 people, and it went very well. And all the success goes to each and every one of you for supporting the MPS event to such a great extent. I believe that in this program throughout the nation and also internationally we had registrations. All the credit goes to all of you. I would say participants, management, and the speakers, and to the Medical Pharmacology Society, which has been doing very well as far as the like conducting these kind of programs are concerned. Yes, we are a little bit slow on other parts. We require support from everyone, especially from MD pharmacologists. Take up this as a very important initiative and join as life members and continue to support us. Like there is no perfect way of making things happen, so you have to start somewhere. I would like to tell you here that like we started with zero amount of money in the account. Today we have almost 5 lakhs rupees in the society account, and I would like to say that like all your single penny, whatever you are adding to the society, it is well protected and it is very important. It is there and it is your asset, and it will be used for your like for your development and conducting these kind of programs. We need to conduct a annual conference which we are planning at our institution. So let us hope that we will be able to realize that dream, and we need support, especially from all of you, which will really fuel us to take up bigger steps. As you know that like all these 4 lakhs, 5 lakhs, it is nothing as of now, and we require like we need to establish an office, we need to establish a like office clerks and all. So many things are there, so which will really we need support from all of you, and we have the support from the office bearers and all the registered members, but like we are a little bit slow. We are apologizing for that, but we will definitely make it a better future, and we will work. This is our lifetime commitment, and we will make it. Thank you very much for joining us and supporting us from all the angles, and we'll be back again with the next program.
Thank you, sir. Thank you a lot. The pleasure was all mine, and I really got to learn newer things regarding drug repurposing. Thanks to you and your college for providing this platform and this opportunity to me.
Okay, so now I'm going to post the post test, and also I'll be posting the feedback, and after that you will be getting the you will be getting the certificate. Okay, and speaker certificate will be definitely issued, and it will be sent, and even to Lini and Shweta, you will be getting a speaker certificate and co-chairperson certificate. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.